I will speak to you plainly, because at my age there is little reason to decorate the truth. I am 103 years old now, and if you ask me what lesson took me the longest to understand, it is this. The liver remembers everything you drink. Every glass, every celebration, every night you tell yourself, just one more. The body is patient, but the liver keeps the ledger. When I was younger, I did not think about organs or enzymes or long-term damage. I thought about work, friends, laughter, and the simple habit of pouring a drink at the end of a long day. Many people of my generation did the same. A drink was normal. 2 drinks felt harmless. And for years, nothing seemed wrong. But the liver is a quiet worker. It does not complain loudly. It processes toxins, filters the blood, and breaks down alcohol molecule by molecule. When alcohol enters the body, the liver must convert it into chemicals the body can eliminate. First into acetaldehyde, a toxic compound, and then into less harmful substances that can eventually be removed. The problem is simple. When alcohol arrives faster than the liver can process it, damage begins slowly and silently. At first, fat starts to accumulate in liver cells. Doctors call this fatty liver. At this stage, many people feel nothing at all. No pain, no warning, just quiet stress inside the organ that keeps you alive. If drinking continues, inflammation can follow. This condition is called alcoholic hepatitis. Over time, repeated injury causes scar tissue to form. That scar tissue is fibrosis, and when it becomes severe, the condition is known as cirrhosis. I learned these truths not from textbooks, but from watching friends grow ill long before their time. That is why today, at 103 years old, I say something very simple. If you want your liver to protect you for a lifetime, you must protect it first, by drinking less. Let me begin with the truth that many people misunderstand. The liver is one of the most remarkable organs in the human body. It works every hour of every day, quietly performing hundreds of chemical tasks that keep you alive. It filters toxins from the bloodstream, produces bile to help digest fats, stores vitamins, regulates blood sugar, and manages the complex chemistry of metabolism. But one of its most demanding responsibilities is processing alcohol. When alcohol enters the bloodstream, the body immediately treats it as a toxin. Unlike nutrients, alcohol cannot simply circulate harmlessly through the system. It must be broken down and eliminated. Nearly 90% of that work falls on the liver. Inside the liver cells are enzymes whose job is to dismantle alcohol molecule by molecule. The first step is performed by an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. This enzyme converts alcohol into a compound called acetaldehyde. Unfortunately, acetaldehyde is far more toxic than alcohol itself. It is a reactive chemical that can damage proteins, DNA, and cell membranes. Under normal conditions, the body quickly converts acetaldehyde into a safer compound called acetate, which can then be further broken down into water and carbon dioxide. When drinking is occasional and moderate, the liver can usually manage this process without much trouble. But the liver has limits. When alcohol arrives in large amounts, the metabolic system becomes overwhelmed. Acetaldehyde begins to accumulate. Oxidative stress increases inside liver cells. Inflammation begins to appear. Over time, these small injuries start to add up. The first stage of alcohol-related liver damage is fatty liver disease. In this condition, fat begins to accumulate inside the liver cells. Alcohol disrupts the liver's ability to properly metabolize fats, causing triglycerides to build up within the tissue. What makes fatty liver particularly dangerous is that it often produces no symptoms. A person may feel perfectly normal while the liver slowly becomes overloaded with fat. Many people only discover the condition during routine medical tests or imaging scans. The good news is that fatty liver can often be reversed. When alcohol consumption is reduced or stopped, the liver begins to repair itself. Fat deposits can decrease, inflammation can subside, and normal function can gradually return. But if heavy drinking continues, the damage progresses. The next stage is alcoholic hepatitis. Despite the name, this condition is not caused by a virus like other forms of hepatitis. Instead, it results from chronic alcohol-induced inflammation. Liver cells become injured, immune responses intensify, and swelling occurs throughout the tissue. People with alcoholic hepatitis may begin to notice symptoms. Fatigue becomes more common. Appetite decreases. The skin or eyes may develop a yellow tint due to elevated bilirubin levels, a condition known as jaundice. In severe cases, abdominal swelling or confusion may occur. At this point, the liver is no longer quietly tolerating the damage. It is struggling. If alcohol exposure continues beyond this stage, scar tissue begins to form. This process is known as fibrosis. Scar tissue replaces healthy liver cells, disrupting blood flow and interfering with the organ's ability to perform its vital functions. Unlike fat accumulation or mild inflammation, scar tissue cannot easily disappear. It alters the structure of the liver itself. When fibrosis becomes extensive, the condition progresses to cirrhosis. Cirrhosis represents advanced, irreversible scarring of the liver. Blood can no longer flow properly through the organ. Toxins begin to accumulate in the body, and complications such as internal bleeding, fluid buildup, and liver failure may develop. By the time cirrhosis appears, treatment options become limited. In severe cases, the only solution may be a liver transplant. Over the years, I have watched this progression happen to people I knew. Some were strong men who worked hard all their lives. Some were cheerful friends who believed they could drink heavily for decades without consequence. They did not realize that the liver keeps a quiet account of every excess. The damage does not arrive overnight. It accumulates slowly, like rust forming on iron. But here is the hopeful truth I want you to understand. The liver also has a remarkable ability to heal. Few organs in the human body possess the regenerative capacity of the liver. When injury occurs, healthy liver cells can divide and replace damaged tissue. Even after significant stress, the organ can rebuild itself if the cause of the damage is removed in time. This is why reducing alcohol consumption can make such a profound difference. When alcohol intake decreases, the liver no longer has to devote so much of its energy to detoxification. Oxidative stress declines, inflammation subsides, fat metabolism begins to normalize. Over time, the liver's internal chemistry returns closer to balance. Doctors often see dramatic improvements in liver function tests within weeks or months after a person reduces drinking. This recovery process is especially powerful in the early stages of liver disease. Fatty liver, for example, can often reverse entirely with lifestyle changes. Even moderate inflammation can improve significantly when alcohol exposure decreases. But the window for recovery becomes smaller once fibrosis and cirrhosis develop. At that point, some damage may be permanent. That is why moderation matters long before illness becomes visible. Many people assume that liver disease only affects those who drink extremely large amounts of alcohol. While heavy drinking certainly increases the risk, even moderate drinking over many years can contribute to gradual liver stress, particularly when combined with poor diet, obesity, or certain medications. The liver must process not only alcohol, but also medications, environmental toxins, and metabolic byproducts from daily life. When alcohol is added to this workload in large quantities, the organ becomes overburdened. Reducing alcohol consumption lightens that burden. Some people ask me whether the body truly benefits from drinking less, even later in life. My answer is always the same. The liver responds positively at almost any age. The body is designed to move toward healing whenever possible. By drinking less alcohol, you allow the liver to do what it was built to do: repair, restore, and protect the body from harm. And if there is one lesson I wish more people understood earlier in life, it is this: your liver is patient, but it is not indestructible. The choices you make today determine how well it will serve you tomorrow. By the time a man reaches 103 years of age, he begins to see life differently. Patterns become clearer. Causes and consequences that once seemed distant begin to reveal themselves plainly. And one pattern I have watched repeatedly across decades is this: the people who protected their liver often protected their future without even realizing it. You see, the liver is not only responsible for breaking down alcohol, its influence spreads across the entire body. When the liver suffers, many other systems suffer with it. The liver regulates blood sugar by storing and releasing glucose when the body needs energy. It produces proteins that help the blood clot properly. It manufactures bile, which allows the body to digest and absorb fats and fat-soluble vitamins such as vitamins A, D, E, and K. It also helps manage cholesterol levels and filters harmful substances from circulation. When alcohol damages the liver, these systems begin to lose balance. For example, when liver cells are inflamed or scarred, the organ cannot properly regulate fat metabolism. This can cause fat to accumulate not only in the liver, but also throughout the bloodstream, contributing to metabolic problems. Cholesterol regulation may become impaired, and the body's ability to process nutrients becomes less efficient. The immune system can also be affected. The liver plays an important role in filtering bacteria and toxins from the blood that comes from the digestive tract. When liver function declines, harmful substances can circulate more freely through the body. In severe cases of liver damage, toxins that would normally be removed begin to accumulate in the bloodstream and eventually reach the brain. This condition, known as hepatic encephalopathy, can cause confusion, memory problems, and difficulty concentrating. These consequences illustrate something many people overlook. Protecting the liver is not only about avoiding one disease, it is about preserving the stability of the entire internal system. Over the years, I watched many men believe they were strong enough to outrun the effects of alcohol. In youth, the body is forgiving. A person may drink heavily in their 20s or 30s and still wake up the next day feeling capable and energetic. This creates the illusion that the body is invulnerable. But biology operates on accumulation. Small injuries repeated thousands of times eventually create visible damage. Each episode of excessive drinking places stress on liver cells. Each surge of acetaldehyde and oxidative stress creates tiny molecular disruptions. Over decades, those disruptions add up. The tragedy is that the early stages of liver damage rarely produce dramatic symptoms. People continue their habits because they feel fine. They assume the body is handling the alcohol without consequence. Meanwhile, inside the liver, silent changes are occurring. Fat begins to accumulate. Inflammatory signals increase. Immune cells respond to damaged tissue. The architecture of the liver slowly begins to shift. Eventually, if the cycle continues, scar tissue replaces healthy liver cells. Scar tissue does not perform the same metabolic functions. It simply occupies space where functioning tissue once existed. This is why cirrhosis becomes such a dangerous condition. The liver becomes stiff and irregular, and blood flow through the organ becomes restricted. As pressure builds in the portal vein, the large vessel that carries blood from the digestive organs to the liver, complications begin to appear. Fluid can accumulate in the abdomen, a condition known as ascites. Fragile blood vessels in the esophagus may swell and rupture. The body may struggle to eliminate toxins efficiently. Energy levels decline. Muscle mass decreases. When you reach my age, you begin to recognize how many of these tragedies could have been avoided with earlier moderation. But I want to emphasize something important. Reducing alcohol intake does not mean a person must live a life devoid of enjoyment. It simply means respecting the limits of the body. Many health organizations around the world suggest moderation guidelines to reduce risk. For many adults, moderate drinking is defined as up to 1 drink per day for women and up to 2 drinks per day for men. Even these levels should be approached with caution, depending on individual health conditions. However, the true principle is not found in numbers alone. The real principle is awareness. When alcohol becomes a daily escape, a coping mechanism, or a routine habit rather than an occasional pleasure, the liver begins to carry an unnecessary burden. I learned this lesson gradually. In my younger years, I did not think about enzyme pathways or liver regeneration. But as time passed and I watched the consequences unfold around me, I began to change my own habits. I reduced my drinking slowly at first. A glass became half a glass. Evenings that once involved alcohol became evenings with tea or water. I did not make the change because someone forced me. I made it because I began to understand the quiet intelligence of the body. The liver, given the chance, will work tirelessly to restore balance. Research over the years has confirmed what many physicians have long observed. When people significantly reduce or eliminate alcohol consumption, liver function often improves. Enzyme levels in the blood decrease, indicating less cellular damage. Fat accumulation begins to diminish. Inflammation subsides. Even individuals who have experienced moderate liver injury can see meaningful recovery when alcohol exposure stops. This capacity for repair is one of the most remarkable aspects of human biology. The liver can regenerate tissue in ways that many other organs cannot. Healthy liver cells can multiply and replace injured areas, restoring structure and function over time. But regeneration has limits. If scarring becomes extensive, the liver cannot fully rebuild itself. That is why the earlier a person reduces alcohol intake, the greater the potential for recovery. I sometimes imagine the liver as a loyal worker who never complains. Day after day, it filters the blood, detoxifies chemicals, and maintains the delicate chemistry that keeps every cell alive. All it asks in return is not to be overwhelmed. Drinking less alcohol is one of the simplest ways to grant the liver the respect it deserves. It reduces toxic exposure, lowers inflammation, and allows the organ to focus on its many other vital responsibilities. And after more than a century of watching the consequences of human habits, I can say with certainty that the body rewards those who treat it with patience and restraint. Longevity is not always the result of extraordinary medical interventions. Often it is the quiet outcome of thousands of small decisions made across a lifetime. Choosing to drink less is one of those decisions, simple, powerful, and deeply protective of the organ that protects you. Now that I have lived more than a century, I have learned that health is rarely determined by dramatic moments. It is shaped by quiet habits repeated day after day. The liver, perhaps more than any other organ, reflects the consequences of those habits. For most of my life, I did not think about the liver very often. Like many people, I assumed that if I felt fine, everything inside my body must also be fine. But age has a way of revealing truths that youth tends to ignore. The liver works without applause. It filters toxins, regulates metabolism, supports digestion, and protects the body from countless harmful substances. Yet when alcohol becomes excessive, that faithful organ must work harder than it was designed to. At first, the burden seems small, a drink here, a celebration there. But over the years, the chemical stress accumulates, fat builds in the liver, inflammation appears, scar tissue begins to replace healthy cells. These changes happen slowly, often silently, until the consequences finally emerge. What I wish more people understood is that protecting the liver does not require complicated strategies. The most powerful step is surprisingly simple: drink less. When alcohol intake decreases, the liver receives relief. Inflammation can fade, fat accumulation can reverse. The body's internal balance begins to restore itself. Even later in life, the liver can recover remarkable amounts of function when given the opportunity. This is why moderation is not merely advice, it is protection. After 103 years of watching friends, family, and generations pass through life, I have come to believe that longevity often depends on respecting the body's limits. The liver will serve you faithfully for decades if you allow it the chance. And the easiest way to offer that respect is a choice you can make every day. Drink less, and your liver will quietly take care of the rest.